Hello, this is Jennifer with Make My Heart Smile, and today I wanted to share my thoughts about this particular yarn, Red Heart's Granny Square All-in-One variegated yarn. Their slogan is no color switchin', keep on stitchin'. And the idea is that the yarn changes color in just the right amount for you to make this particular size and patterned granny square. Now, before we get into my likes and dislikes, I do have some other granny square projects that I've loved to do over the years. Coasters obviously are one of my favorite things to do, coaster sets. And so I've had lots of practice with granny square patterns over the year with that granny square stitch. Valentine's Day is coming up, so I've been doing some heart-shaped things. And this particular cowl I love, and it did have a granny square style stitch, or granny stitch, I guess, with those double crochets. And so I have made quite a few things over the years. I do love granny square sunburst pattern granny squares, and this is a pillow. I'm just showing you a corner of it. A pillow that I did a few years ago, and as you can see, with those particular colors of yarn, I did lots of variation. I started my center and worked out from there in a lot of different ways with those particular yarns that I had. And I will say that weaving in ends is never fun when you're changing color and you just have all of those ends sticking out and you come to the end and you just want to move on to the next one, or you just want to finish the project and you've got all of these ends to weave in. Not my favorite thing to do. If you're a crocheter like me, you probably are shaking your head in agreement. And so let's talk about what I love. I would definitely say that this particular yarn in this particular project or purpose is like color pooling, meets granny squares. So this is a scarf I did a few years ago with this particular color pool pattern, which I love, but let me tell you, super duper challenging. And I definitely wasn't mass producing these for market. It was quite a challenge. I loved it. I learned a lot, obviously, with the moss stitch and with color pooling. If you've ever tried it, you know that tension is super duper important, and you have to line up your pattern, line up those stitches so that when the color of the variegated yarn changes, you're spot on. And so I would say that this is like that, like color pooling meets your basic granny square pattern. And this particular yarn does recommend, now Red Heart, size 4, usually I usually use a 5, or sometimes I just go rogue and my labels on yarn, I don't always follow it. My tension seems to be tighter. I tend to crochet on the tight side. And so I like to play around. And so I started with a 5. However, it recommends, if I can get that to focus, it recommends a 5.5. And I would not deviate from that. I learned the hard way. I had my 5, I had a 5.5, and I actually have a 5.25, a 5.25. And I had to frog and just figure it out. And I found that actually my 5.25 was perfect. And so, again, depending on if you're a loose crocheter or a tight crocheter, your hook size will matter tremendously, and holding an even tension. So if you're a beginner crocheter and you are, practicing with granny squares and you just know that tension has been a problem for you or a challenge for you in other projects you've done, this is a great practice on that. This is perfect for learning to keep an even tension throughout a piece or a project. And if I had done all 14, by the way, this claims one skein will make 14 6 by 6 inch squares. If I had sat down and did all 14 all at once, I probably would have gotten into the flow, into the rhythm, and I wouldn't have had to frog so many times. But my first attempt here definitely found that all the rumors are true. It is challenging to keep that tension so that when you come around and start that new color, when it, changes to the next color, you have to be spot on. Spot on where you're starting that new double crochet cluster. So I admit I frogged quite a few times, sometimes the entire thing, sometimes just halfway, just to keep those either looser or tighter to line up. And I don't know, I would say at the end, the amount of time that it took me to frog and redo might have been the time it would have taken me to weave in ends. I'll just be honest. However, frogging and getting my tension just right still is something I would prefer over weaving in ends. That's how much I hate weaving in ends. And so, yeah, it took a little patience, but I got it and I had fun with it. And I know that I would have gotten into the flow if I'd had time to really do all of them at once. And so I don't know what I'm going to do with this particular color scheme or pattern yet. Thinking about it. So I definitely would try it. It definitely was fun and good practice for beginners. Um, I wouldn't say that it would be a huge time saver in that getting that tension just right requires some frogging and weaving in ends requires some time. So I think it's kind of even Steven on that. Um, if you wanted to do a particular size, like smaller, let's say if you want to do a smaller crochet coaster, let's say, you could, although you can't deviate from the basic pattern, so I couldn't make this a sunburst because I wouldn't have enough teal or I wouldn't have enough blue. You could, after that coral round in this particular color, pop culture, you could just stop and cut off the teal and black and then start again with the dark teal. I consider that a waste of yarn. Obviously, we all have some yarn bits here and there. Little coasters are great for stash busting those yarns that you have left over. And that's what granny squares are great for, right? But in this particular one, you could do that. You could make something smaller. You can't make something bigger. So if I wanted to do an 8-inch, I can't go from my black back to my teal or any other color inside of this because there won't be enough of that particular color to then go around the black and on and on. And so you are really limited on your creativity. If you're like me and like to just make it your own or go rogue on a pattern or variegated yarn, I wouldn't recommend that with this particular one. It does limit you to this pattern, to these colors in this order. And they do make a petite, so Red Heart Granny all-in-one square petite, which will make 4-inch squares over and over. And then there's a grande, which will make 8-inch squares over and over with one yarn ball. So there's that. They offer that, which I found out. That's super helpful. So if you have ever seen this in the stores and have wondered about it, like I did, I would highly recommend it. I've had a lot of fun despite some of the challenges and look forward to, I think I'm going to make a market bag or like a slouchy beach bag, something in the lines of a bag, something along the lines of a bag, I think. So I will have to find other yarn to seam the squares together. And so that's another thing. If you are very particular about matchy, finding another black that will match this perfectly. Maybe we all know about color lot, right? Our die lot. So if you use the invisible join to seam granny squares together, it may not be a problem because that yarn might be hidden more. But if I wanted my seams to show, then I am going to have to find a black that will, in my particular opinion, I would try to match the black. I will have to go out and buy that extra yarn. So there is that as well to think about. But highly recommend, and I hope you have fun with it if you are a crocheter like me. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to follow along to see more. And happy crafting.